Eva. So we're going to start off looking at your artist statement where you talk about the importance of the forest to you, going out and exploring to take and taking photographs. You talk about the light that you're using and why you're using that light and how the wetness of the foliage also works well with the light that you're using. You talk about the fact that you normally would photograph people in this atmosphere, but you're kind of challenging yourself a little bit more by just focusing on nature and not including any people in this. And then I really appreciated the intent that you made, both in the order of the images and just the way that you photographed by looking up and looking down. And I think that really feeds into this idea of slowing down and looking around, because you're forcing us to look down and then look up and then look down and then look up. So I think that worked out really well. First, let's look at your technical side of this. I'm looking at your ISO, and it looks like you stayed at 800 for all of these. And as we look at these larger, we'll see if that had any negative effect, but I don't remember noticing anything in any of your images. Yeah, no, I'm not seeing anything. And your aperture, you're at f8, 5.6, 8. So you are making some changes, but you're kind of staying in that mid range. And thinking about that, I would just encourage you to push that a little bit. For some images, you might want more depth of field. For example, this image, you might want all of this in focus. I don't know. Or this image, you might want just these 2 or 3 mushrooms in focus. But just pushing it to have more depth of field and less depth of field where appropriate. You're also changing your lenses a lot, or changing your focal length a lot, not your lenses necessarily, from 122 to 45. So a lot of movement there, a really long lens, especially when you're looking closely at these mushrooms. I'm curious why you did that instead of just moving physically closer, if they were in maybe spots that were a little harder to get to and it was easier for you to use that longer lens. Or using that longer lens will also make f8 seem more like f4, so if that was part of your intent. When I go through all of these, we'll look again and see if they're all nice and sharp, because remember, if you're shooting with a longer lens, you're going to need a faster shutter speed. Only if you're hand holding. If you're on a tripod, it doesn't matter. But if you're shooting with 145 millimeters, as you are here, then you would want to be shooting at a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second or faster. You always want your shutter speed to be faster than your focal length. The light in your images, you talked about wanting the golden hour. And we have the soft light in all of these images. That's actually really pleasing to allow us to get in there and see the detail of everything. We're not getting the golden hour and really the effects of that, but we do have this softer color of light. You have more of the effects of the golden hour on the trees and not so much on the mushrooms, which are more in the shaded area. So as I'm looking at these a little bit closer, that seems like it's totally in focus. I don't think there's any issue there. And here you just have this shallower depth of field. So as we get back here, we find our point of focus. So it looks like you are on a tripod or able to really steady yourself, or on a monopod, because everything's looking nice and sharp on there. The color of your images, I think, works really well, is very cohesive. Shooting this in fall, where even the mushrooms have these nice rich reds and browns and yellows, really helps us move through the series and makes it look visually cohesive. So we have all of these earthy tones that are like red, yellow, brown, and green. And keeping a smaller color palette will always make your series look more cohesive. So that's definitely working for you. Compositionally, we have some images where you have more selective focus and we're getting in there and seeing the details, as we are in these two or this image. We have some images with repetition and a really shallow point of focus, as we do in this image. Some are all about repetition, as we have here and here. We almost get overwhelmed by repetition in this image. And then we have line in a lot of these images. So the repetition is in these images. We also have the texture, so the repetition in these images. And then the lines are in this image or this image or this image. You kind of have this layer that you get through of leaves to find those lines. So visually, your series is really cohesive. Your artist statement is solid. It seems like not only do you have a reasoning behind this, you came at these images with a visual cohesion for color and shape and compositional elements. So overall, I think you did a really nice job creating a really solid, cohesive project with a concept behind it. Nice work this semester.